Welcome to the first ever episode of the Journawell Beyond All Borders podcast. I created Journawell originally to be a place where people could come and ask for help to navigate IVF abroad, trying to find the best solutions to their medical and family planning kind of issues that they were facing. Something I'd been through myself. It was a lot of work trying to navigate it. And after I did my IVF journey abroad, I came back and kind of created this place where people could find me and ask me for my help and support in helping them go for affordable IVF abroad. That really kind of evolved into what this is today, and it's more of a platform. Now, obviously, myself as an ex-IVF patient, a SEN autism mum with ADHD myself, and also working on my career and trying to navigate my own life journeys, I kind of thought about creating this podcast where we could share information. I could share the kind of things that I struggled with and how I overcame them. We could have a discussion with many people going through these same kind of things. And Beyond All Borders started off as a travel plan, but really what it turned into is a collection of the borders and boundaries that we place on ourselves to stop us from moving forward and to block us in like a self-sabotage. And everyone does it. So I thought, you know what, Beyond All Borders is going to be a way we can break out of the limitations that we set on ourselves. And that's really why we're here. So from the website, you can all take a look. It's journawell.com. On there is going to be links to the podcasts, collections of blogs that I've written or other people have written as well. And then also there's going to be a collection of all of these videos that we're going to have. And each video is going to have a different topic and a different theme on things that I think are very relevant right now to mums, parents, people who are going through some of these struggles. So today's episode is the truth about IVF abroad and the things that people don't tell you about it. So my personal story is in 2020, when COVID happened, we were going through a TTC journey, a trying to conceive journey. That wasn't getting us anywhere, the old-fashioned way. So we went for medical checkups, we went to go see what was wrong, and it turned out that I had a thing called a hydrous alpinx, which is when one of your fallopian tubes gets full with a toxic kind of liquid. So that means any sort of chances of creating an embryo will be poisoned by that liquid. During the height of COVID, I was on a waiting list for a salpingectomy, which is where they take away the tube so that the uterus is habitable for the embryo to grow. So obviously my personal body clock is ticking, and then COVID is happening. So they want to make sure that they're seeing people with cancer, seeing people with like life critical illnesses, which makes sense. But obviously in my head, my biggest desire was to get that baby created. If I'm not mistaken, it might be towards the end of around 2021, my turn had come up to get the surgery. So I was sent to Southend Hospital to be able to have that surgery. And then we decided to plan a trip to Turkey for IVF. Now, for us, Turkey and IVF was always the plan. There was no figuring out where we're going to go. Turkey was the place where we're going to go. We'd already been to Turkey before. We have fallen in love with that country. We're going to end up retiring there anyway. So Turkey was always going to be the place that we were going to go to. We weren't going to go until August of 2022. But we ended up going in April 2022. I'd gone through the process, I'd gone through the research and all the clinics, and I'd stumbled across one clinic that I felt was right. I knew the area where it was as well, just because I had been living in Istanbul before for a year, teaching primary school. That was back when the London riots kicked off, I believe, 2011, 2012 maybe. And I'd already been to Istanbul, so I knew my way around. And this particular clinic was in a place next to a metro station that I was familiar with. So that was fine. That all worked out. I knew what I was doing. I was headstrong. I was planning it. And Yeah, we did our IVF there. I took sick leave from my job at the time, and I had a doctor's note. And then at the time, my manager was very understanding, so she allowed me to have that 3 week sick leave, so we could do the whole IVF treatment in Istanbul. So you can have the options. You can go to Turkey for, I think, sometimes 3 to 5 days. You can go for a week. You can go for the full treatment, which is about 21 days. So I wanted to do the full thing in Istanbul. So we just rented an apartment and stayed in a place next to a metro station called Shishli. And we stayed in Shishli, and then we had to get the metro around. If you're going in Istanbul, for example, the main street is the main shopping town is called Taksim, which I think translates to my taxi, Taksim. Maybe I don't know if I've just made that up, but that's where all the kind of the main shops are, and where a lot of the tourism happens. That's the central hub of tourism in Taksim. So you can get the metro is very handy, so you can get around easily. It's very cheap just to get an Istanbul card and just move around. So yeah, we were living there, was doing IVF and just touring around, going to the mosques, going to the zoos, going to restaurants, doing bits of shopping in the Grand Bazaar. It was just a whole experience. And then we found out we were pregnant probably towards the end of the trip, actually. And I wasn't sure if it was real or not, because I tested it very early when I was told not to test it. Again, you can't help yourself sometimes when you need to do those tests, do those pregnancy tests that you're dying to do. So yeah, we found out towards the end, and then we just kept testing until we got home. And yeah, that was the start of that next chapter of our lives, being parents. That led us on to a whole other journey, which we'll cover in a few other episodes, about like finding out your child has autism, seeing the signs, and I'll cover those. But what I've realised is the reality of researching IVF abroad is and can be quite daunting to people maybe who haven't even travelled before, haven't left the UK, or haven't left the US. We travel quite often. I don't know, probably either way, whatever our annual leave is at work, we will do that and then more in travel. So we're quite familiar with moving around. And when I was using Journawell as a IVF travel concierge, I do a lot of the fertility shows and the travel shows. So you get to meet a lot of clinics, you meet a lot of people. I had connections with a lot of clinics. So that's why people use that service. They just came to me. I'd interview them, talk to them, and find out what it was they wanted and what their purpose was. And then I would be able to figure out the right country, the right location, the right clinic for them. So that was easy for me. In terms of sustainability, the issue I had was having a full-time job, now having a child with high needs, nonverbal autism, and having to navigate my own life as well as other people's needs. I struggle, to be honest. So I'm on my last client at the moment, and now this is what I want to do. What we want to talk about today really is the cost of IVF abroad. What is the comparison between having IVF abroad and then also doing IVF in, I don't know, wherever you're based. So if it's the UK or the US. I think in terms of the UK, it might be a little bit cheaper than the US anyway to have IVF, but I think on par it comes similar-ish. Now, what the first questions people always say are, is it clean? Is it hygienic? Is it going to be safe? And we're in a place where, okay, well, we live in the United Kingdom and we have free healthcare. So you'll get whatever you need, you'll get the basic version of what you need. If you want something a bit more fancy in terms of healthcare, then you can go private. You can use other companies to get your healthcare. So what you'll find in other countries is you're paying privately. Now, just because you're paying a lot less than you would in the UK, their version of private is going to be cheaper than our version of private. So you're going to get this VIP luxury treatment for like a fraction of the price. Now, you also have to think about things like flights, who you're going with, accommodation, what you're going to eat, how you're going to survive. So it needs to be worked out to a point where you're actually 3 weeks down the line, you haven't just bought all of your clothes and done a whole bunch of shopping and you've acquired maybe £10,000 worth of spending in this trip. So working this out structurally. So, for example, when we did IVF in Turkey, our son was born in 2023. So this would have been 2022. And there was 4 of us. So we went with myself, my husband, and his 2 children. So that was 2 of my stepchildren. So it was like basically a whole family of us went to Istanbul, and we did the flights using Turkish Airlines. We did an apartment for 3 weeks. The apartment was very cheap. I just found an Airbnb. So that probably didn't even cost more than £300 for the whole trip. Flights would have been a bit more. But again, because it was April, I think the flights came to about £300 return flights from London Gatwick to Ataturk Airport in Istanbul. The travel itself wasn't expensive. And then the IVF itself was 1,800 for the actual, just the IVF with ICSI, which is where they take the sperm directly into the egg. So it's injecting the sperm directly into egg to fertilize it. It's not just putting them together and hoping something happens. So that was £1,800 for the IVF itself. Then we paid another £250 to freeze the extra embryos that we had afterwards, just in case we wanted to have another baby. In the end, we didn't. At the time, I was 37, 38. By the time we'd gone through and realised that Forrest was autistic and we had to focus on that, having another child wasn't part of the plan and wasn't in the picture. Those costs add up as well if you want that. And then I had, I think David had some blood tests, but again, that was short change, maybe £50 to £90. And then we had the medicines that we needed. So you have to inject yourself every day to kind of stimulate the follicles. So at the time, that was $200. So again, I don't think we paid more than £2,500 for the IVF itself in total, and we came home pregnant. In this current climate, IVF now, I think the cheapest you'll probably find it would be in India, but again, it depends if you want to travel that far. But if you're going to make a holiday out of it, then fine. But India is doing IVF for between £800 and £1,000 per cycle per round, which is one cycle is based on 1 month, on period month. So you've also got things like Turkey. Turkey is relatively cheap. You're looking at £2,500 to £3,000. But again, Turkey has legality, so you need to be husband and wife, or at least prove that you're basically husband and wife without the marriage certificate, so like a civil partnership. But by law, it's husband and wife, male, female, and you need to prove that it's a Muslim country. There's a lot more flexibility in terms of same-sex couples, options like ROPA, which is where you're a same-sex couple with 2 women, and you use one person's egg, they fertilize it with donor sperm and put that in somebody else. So it's kind of a transfer there. So countries like Spain do ROPA, Greece, some parts of Greece do ROPA. So there's different countries for different things that you need. Greece comes up at the cheapest at the moment at between 1,000 and 500 for one cycle of IVF. Cyprus is a good option. Cyprus have a lot of clinics with AI these days, so you can get a lot more security. You can do the genetic testing. You can also do the gender selection as well. So, I mean, you can do that in most clinics, but there's a couple of clinics in Cyprus at the moment, the Turkish part of Cyprus, that are doing a lot more AI as well. Now, you think about, for example, what I paid for a cost of a whole trip, including spending, was maybe £5,000 in total. And again, we were having breakfast in our apartment, so we'd buy like cheeses and breads and make our own little Turkish breakfast, so a semi kind of kahvaltı, which is a Turkish breakfast, in the apartment, and then going out. And then out of the 3 weeks, we went out every single day. We'd probably have a couple nights a week in watching Netflix because I wasn't feeling too great from all the injections and the appointments. Yeah, we had a great time. We explored. other countries as well. You've got countries like Czech Republic, you've got countries like Denmark, all of these other countries. There's so many options for you to do IVF abroad, and also at a fraction of the cost. So you're thinking a range between 2,500 and £5,000 for a cycle of IVF. And again, there's deals where you can do like there's guarantee programs where you pay 10 grand and they'll keep doing it until you get a baby. There's also programs where you can buy a package deal of 3, but obviously if you get pregnant in the first try, then you've paid for a package deal of 3. So you have to weigh it up and have that conversation with what your medical history is, what your situation is, and what you want out of it. So in terms of hidden financial costs as well, though, I don't think there were any hidden costs. The only thing I did, which I shouldn't have done, was I was buying little baby things. Now, this is before we got pregnant. This is while we was in the market, and I saw little baby items or little baby clothes, especially when you're in Turkey where they've got so much market life. So I did buy a few things, but I think when you're going to have a journey that's that important to you, I've got images, videos, memories of this wonderful excursion, this trip that we had to create our child. And to me, I think even though, in the UK, it's 10 to 15 grand, just to have one round of IVF, having that experience of the holiday, the discounted price. And then also I would have been able to afford as many rounds as you want really at that price. We've got a 2-income household. You'll be able to think, okay, month on, month off. It's how you navigate taking time off work would have been the issue. But at that price, it was affordable and realistic. And also before that, I had prepped my body so much before going, having to change my diet, cutting out drinking, cutting out smoking, not being able to eat the foods that I was used to eating, like convenient food. So I was just changing my whole lifestyle, preparing my body, drinking a whole bunch of disgusting Chinese teas and whatever, acupuncture, all the other things that you find that was covering my feed with cleansing my body before IVF I was doing. So I was mentally ready to be pregnant. I was not walking out of Turkey without a baby growing. And due to my age being a bit older, we had the option of putting in 1 embryo or 2 embryos. We chose 2, and for some reason I found that so stressful towards the time when we had to get the baby scan. So we were having the baby scan, and I was thinking, oh my God, what if it's 2 babies? What do I do if there's 2 babies? So that was my kind of anxiety towards the end. It wasn't 2 babies, thankfully. But again, I think if it was 2 babies, we would have managed, would have survived, it would have been what it was. And then you also need to really think about the emotional cost. Now, while for me, I wasn't thinking about work, I wasn't thinking about anything, I was completely stress-free. I was there with my husband and my stepkids, and we were just having a nice time. So my mental clarity was stress-free. I was in a country that I love very much. We were getting chocolate strawberries, we were eating kebabs, we were looking for street foods, having baklavas. It was such an enjoyable time, being a tourist as well as having those medical treatments and I was making videos as well and taking pictures and really having an experience. So I think when you have a mental clarity and a lack of stress, that also prepares your body for having that embryo stick and stay and grow. So the emotional cost is, do you want to be going to work every day in the UK, paying £15,000 for 1 cycle of IVF in a private situation, but you're still living your stressful daily life, thinking about bills, thinking about what to cook for dinner? There's a difference between your mindset in your everyday life where you've got things to solve, then when you're on a holiday, basically. So I think that for me was a no-brainer. I was going to be living my best life while going through this treatment. And then I think the things that nobody tells you about IVF abroad is how safe it is, how clean it is, how easy it is. And the fact that, I think a lot of people are used to their own culture and are used to their own creature comforts. you spend your time in the UK eating foods from around the world, dealing with products that are foreign, you're already prepared for being in a foreign country doing a medical treatment. They will speak English, and if they don't, there will be a person who will be able to translate for you. But these are all medical professionals. They've been to medical school. They speak fluent English. You can have a full conversation with them. It's the best of both worlds. You get to experience another place, or a place you've been to before and you enjoy, but you also get to start your family, or go and think about yourself and your mindset of how you're going to create this child without the stresses of everyday life. I think it's quite interesting when people say to me, "Oh, but I haven't travelled before," or "Oh, I don't know if it's the right thing to do." At the end of the day, the technology is so advanced. You can have a lot of the clinics also have partner clinics in the UK, so you can have a lot of your preliminary treatments and blood tests and things like that in the UK, and then you're flying over there to do a holiday and at the same time have that treatment. It's quite a smooth transition between going to work and having this medical holiday. All of the clinics have partner VIP transfers, so you're going to have that luxury end-to-end service. There's not going to be a point where you're standing at an airport in the middle of nowhere having to wait for a camel to take you somewhere. You've got vehicles, VIP treatment. And again, you're only going to be in the hospital for a small portion of that time. So you're really basically just on holiday. So I think the best advice I could give somebody who wants to go abroad for IVF is reach out, get in touch and email me or fill out the contact form on the website, and we can give you advice on how to navigate your own IVF journey abroad. Because at the end of the day, if you're struggling to have a baby and create that family and do what you need to do, then why limit yourself to a fraction of the world when we have so much space and so many people who've been working their whole careers to build this technology for us and to build these this information for us. So what I really wanted to give you guys as a takeaway for this is that your IVF story doesn't need to be shut off because you think you can't afford it. You can afford it. You can, and even if you want to take your time and explore other avenues, you can save up for it. It's achievable. It's affordable. And I think what people fail to see is that there's always going to be a solution to the problem that you have, and just because the UK doesn't have that solution doesn't mean there's no solution. I really hope that with the videos that we will be creating here at Beyond All Borders, you'll be able to navigate some of life's most difficult journeys while focusing on your wellness. Thank you for listening. Have a good day and see you for the next episode.